while your day is winding down. They're just getting started. This is South Coast Tonight with Chris McCarthy and Marcus Farrow. They've got you covered on all the news of the day, from local issues to politics on both sides of the aisle. This is the place where the movers and shakers come to be heard, to listen, and where they're held accountable. This is South Coast Tonight on WBSM.
South Coast Tonight. I'm Chris McCarthy. Of course, as always, Marcus Farrow is here, and we'll have a great show for you tonight. We have former Mayor of New Bedford, Scott Lang, will be joining us in momentarily. He's just driving over the bridge right now. It's always great to have Scott in. We got a little bit of Scott on our first show. If you guys remember, Scott was our very first guest, and in fact, if you see him, remind him that he was the very first guest on South Coast Tonight. And he was in right before the election, and we're bringing Scott back to talk about the election. There's nobody I like really going over election results more than Scott Lang. He's done this for a long time in a lot of places around the country. And he's in the best sense a Democratic insider, right? And take a seat, Scott. And he really knows of what he's talking about. He's got great experiences. And he's also agreed to read a comic to us. At least one. So the mayor also has something I thought was a very interesting project. I catch more morning TV, Marcus, than I used to these days. And Good Morning America, of course, is a show that Scott Lang's daughter Sarah works on. And she did a very interesting piece recently. You folks can find it on the internet still, on the Uvalde football team. You forget about that life has to go on after these shootings, right? For the kids that weren't involved, directly anyway. And I thought it was a really good piece. So I'd encourage all of you to go to Good Morning America and look that piece up. And we'll ask Scott a little bit about it, because one of the things that, as I was watching it, right, I thought to myself, this must have been a tough piece to do. But one thing, of course, Sarah was relatively young when Scott was the mayor. And although we closed the doors on these things, we don't like to think about it. Scott had a mass shooting. Fortunately, it was not a school situation when he was mayor. We all remember the shooting at the Foxy Lady by a guy from Freetown, a guy I grew up with. Would never have thought he would do something like that. How often do you hear that, right? I know, because I remember talking to Scott. He was woken up by the sound of the gunfire. And Scott lives quite a far distance from the Foxy Lady. And by no design of his own, but he did, and up a hill, really. And there was that AR-15 ripping through the night air. And I thought to myself, that may or may not have impacted, Sarah's recollection of it. She may not even remember, really. I don't know. But I thought of that shooting when I was watching the piece that Sarah did for Good Morning America. So Scott's settled in now. Good morning, Scott. Good evening, Scott. How are you doing?
Great monologue.
Did you like that?
Yeah, it was good.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Marcus. How are you?
We're great. We're great. How are you?
Very good. Happy to be back. Thank you very much.
Happy to have you.
So I'm the third guest now, right? All right.
First Friday guest.
Yeah. So, Marcus, I listened to both of you Tuesday night, and did New Bedford get its returns in?
They did not in time, which was
not for our purposes.
So here's the thing: they not only didn't get their returns in, they forgot to send them to us. They were supposed to send them to our news director, Kate Robinson, who has to wake up at 4 a.m. to do her job every day.
Right.
And so I was able to get the returns because Jack Spillane was proactive and went there, right?
Right.
And so he sent me what he had, and I sent it to Kate, and Kate had said she had not received the returns yet at midnight when she had to wake up at 4 a.m. So I guess, one of the biggest media outlet in the greater New Bedford area, the elections office forgot to send the results to.
So hopefully that will never happen again, because it's, the people vote. They need to.
Or at least not until November.
How they voted, right? Well, right. I hope never again. But
it's weird because turnout's going down, but the time to count the votes is going up. It's
so think about phenomenon. That, Scott. We're getting less people voting, but it's taken longer to count the votes. That's not good.
No, what you want to do is get the vote out as quickly as possible, accurately, but as quickly as possible. But I also want to say something. You mentioned someone, Jack Spillane. Jack works now for New Bedford Light.
Yes. Which
is the other news entity that is attempting to fill the vacuum of not having a local newspaper.
Right.
I mean, we have one we have a title.
We do.
Standard Times, which hopefully someone will come in and buy the Standard Times and turn it back into a local newspaper. But in the meantime, we don't even have an editorial page anymore in the Standard Times.
No.
But the answer to this is, if you want your local news, you come to BSM, or you go to New Bedford Light, or New Bedford Guide does a nice job. There's some social media outlets that do news, and then also the TV stations come over here. Now that the Standard Times isn't around,
it's true.
I see reporters who I've known for a long time in the city of New Bedford covering stories, so that's very helpful. But you've got to have a source of news, and you have to have news. News is the election results, so they have to come out sooner, and they have to be fed, obviously, to the networks.
And the thing that WBSM does in addition to the radio is we have the digital side. So we have a print piece to it, which is very important. But people wake up in the morning, they want to know who won the election. Today's day and age, with all this conspiracy theories, everything else out there, look what happened in Barnstable. Looks like that was just human error. You need those results in. You can't leave it till the last minute. You just can't. It's not good for our process, not good for the faith of the people that are still participating.
Right, exactly right. That's it couldn't be said any clearer than that. As soon as you get them, you shine the light on them, you get them out.
Right. And now, when you were in, Scott, you had a lot of elections, right?
Yes.
You had, did you ever have these problems?
When you have elections, you prepare for it. And I think the election division, I think the department, the employees down there, I know well, and I know they work very hard. But you prepare for an election like you do a hurricane.
Right.
And what you want to do is make sure that there are no slip-ups whatsoever. You have enough ballots. There were times when we didn't have enough ballots.
Yes.
You have to have the ballots at the right precincts.
And where those ballots go is very important.
That's without a doubt, right? You don't want the City Hall ballot fire of 1902 or whenever it was. So you want to make sure that they're protected. You want to make sure that you have your poll workers. So you run it like a drill. I know the city does that. I think it's very important. I don't think, other than forgetting either a click and a drag in this case, and that's what I think it was. You want to run a clean, very efficient election. I think the people in New Bedford do. I love the poll workers. The poll workers do it.
They're the best.
Because they love doing it.
They're the best.
Right? I mean, there's nothing more important. You got to have poll workers. You have to have people who take it seriously and love the city, the country, the whole concept of a participatory democracy. So I think click and a drag, make sure that it's promulgated immediately is very important. I think that you go on the website. I went on the website after you guys went off the air, and it was waiting, eventually popped up. But the sooner the better. And less talk about what's taking so long. Sooner the better. Always. Right. They used to come out precinct by precinct.
Oh, remember that?
Do it.
The block,
it's fun, right?
The block counts, right?
Yeah, it's fun.
You'd just go stand in the gymnasium. They'd come out and they'd go, I got 50. They'd have a block of 50 votes, right?
Right.
And they'd read them off, 20 for Saunders, 20, it was amazing how accurate they turned out to be, really.
Oh, no, always. And it's no matter how, you don't have to be a political junkie to enjoy watching democracy unfold every night, right? That's why Jack went down there.
Right.
Jack went down there to say, hey, what's going on? I need these results. We got to get them out, right? So anyway, the election
and the turnout numbers, that's
Turnout numbers have got to go up.
Right.
They've got to go up. And every election, I'll do a public service.
You do,
saying, please let's go vote. I mean, you got to vote. I do think though that I've always questioned the percentages, not from the standpoint of how many people voted, but what the base is.
Okay.
Because we don't cull as often as we need to.
Yes, explain that, Scott. I don't think people realize that.
So if I have 10 people on a roll, and 3 of them are no longer eligible to vote, they've left, they've, God forbid, passed away, whatever it is. So I've got 7 now. And if 3 turn out and it's in 10, it's 30% of the vote. If 3 turn out and it's 7, it's 40% of the vote. It's a big difference.
Huge difference, right?
So I think that you want to try and cull, but I know, again, that is, put it this way, if you don't cull correctly, that produces a much bigger problem than having voters on there that aren't eligible. Voters who aren't on there, believe it or not, voters who are not eligible, believe it or not, usually don't vote. They usually, in the United States of
Right.
America, they're usually unable to vote.
You're right.
And they don't show up, right?
Right.
If you cull and you cull off me and I show up to vote, they're going to do a provisional ballot,
Right.
which is a pain in the neck, and they have to then meld it in. If it's a close race, it's really a pain in the neck. I could end up being, not me, but that vote
Right.
could end up being the subject of a recount, something like that. They're looking at provisional saying, how did this happen? So you have to be careful how you cull. But the fact is, it's important on a regular basis to cull it out. And that way you'll get a much accurate turnout number. The other thing I want to say is to every precinct where people live, please, there is no excuse whatsoever to not go vote.
Right.
Go downstairs, go to the I want you to go down there and say, I'm voting because I know it's my absolute responsibility and duty. But that itself would bring up our totals dramatically. So if you're at Boa Vista, if you're at the New Bedford Hotel, if you're at Carolyn Street, apartments, if you're at, who else? Olympia Tower. No, I'm not sorry. Tabor Mills.
Yep.
Take the 5 minutes, go downstairs. First you'll see everybody. It's great fun.
Right.
My understanding is Tabor Mill was moved.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Tabor Mills was moved.
See, I hadn't.
To a school, right?
Yeah, they'd moved
to the charter school,
which was I think it's at Alma Del Mar instead,
the charter
which
school,
I
right?
think is
quite a ways away,
and it's unfortunate because
makes no
that's a very reliable voting block.
Right.
That's a lot of elected officials go there all the time.
Oh, certainly.
And that's a very reliable voting block, and now they it's less reliable.
So if you have to. I'm not sure why. That means you combine some precincts, right? You combine precincts.
Right.
We have enough people to man precincts, although I still think we had 41. We had 41, but they must have combined the number of places, that the number of precincts that voted in one place.
Right.
You don't have to do that, especially when it brings down turnout and is an inconvenience.
Right.
I guarantee you that there were people at Tabor Mills who normally would have voted who didn't vote.
I totally agree with you. Now, it's one thing if you have, again, community to community. If you think about the Tabor Mills community, people over there, they're less inclined to get in the car and go, right? Now, in Fairhaven, they combined it because of some reason. I don't know exactly what it was.
I'm still not sure.
They combined it all to the rec center, all right? But it's different because... Yeah. People in Fairhaven have cars. They were expected to drive anyway, in most cases, to their polling place. So the fact that they had to drive a little further or in a different direction did not, I think, really hinder the turnout. But if you live at Tabor Mills and you used to be able to walk downstairs, and now you've got to go, quite frankly, across the ward to get to Alma Del Mar, particularly on a rainy day, you might say the hell with it.
Oh, no, and it was a rainy day.
It was.
So if that had come to me, I would have said, denied. Okay,
right?
You know that.
Yes,
right. So I would have
that red stamp denied.
Well, yeah, and also the motorcycle guy and the progressive commercials, right? I said that we can't do that.
Once that polling place moves, can it be moved back, or is that like affixed with the redistricting?
No, I believe you can. I mean, we're trying allegedly, and I know in New Bedford we are, but allegedly. We're trying to have fair, open, authentic, accurate elections with maximum participation.
Yeah. Right.
Maximum participation means that you don't take one polling place where the people are senior. Most don't have cars. Most are not going to try and figure out a place to park down at Del Mar, right? So that's an example of not trying to accommodate voters, right? And also, it wasn't just that Tabor Mill voted there. That neighborhood voted there. That's
the whole
a big neighborhood.
Right.
That's a big neighborhood. And it kind of is split, to tell you the truth, by either, however you want to do it, Ashley Boulevard or Acushnet Avenue, right?
Right.
There's a natural boundary there. An awful lot of people don't cross Ashley Boulevard, or they don't cross Acushnet Avenue, you know?
Right.
So anyway, well, I don't know enough about it to speak about it, other than if someone had come to me and said, we're going to move Tabor Mill, I would have said, denied.
Right. So obviously, we're paying more attention to the results because we're trying to put a program together to bring news to the public, right?
Yeah.
And so when we're sitting here and we're trying to bring this news, but we're getting it from Attleboro, right?
Yeah.
We're getting news from Attleboro.
I'm getting results,
from Fall River, for God's sake. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
We have the Fall River results, but we don't have.
We had them about an hour before. Hey, we got a call on the line. Let's take it. 508-996-0500. Good evening. You're live.
Fellas, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Great show, and thanks for bringing news. I'm tired of reading 5-day-old news in the Standard Times, so it's good that you guys are there. I will say that anybody who says they didn't get a chance to vote because they moved the precinct is a cop-out. We have a very simple, easy way to vote now, and that's through the mail. Okay?
True.
That's true. People don't like that, but it's a change. Sure, it's a change, but you're going to have to get used to it because that's the way it needs to go. We don't need to spend all kinds of money on staffing precincts all day with a police officer. It needs to be done through the mail and get it done that way. And it needs to be done. Good. I'm glad. I know I'm right.
Right.
What I will say, I think, is it's inexcusable that we're not getting information quicker and in a simpler format, published on a website within 45 minutes, an hour. There's no reason they can't do that because we do it all the time. Every day people keep track of things in their daily life, and it's put in spreadsheets today, and it's instantly published. So I don't see why. And it's, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how they count votes. I don't know what it is. But it just seems to me there's got to be a better way to report that information in a faster way. Because when you sit on it, the longer you sit on it, the more it puts a little doubt in your mind. Like,
that's the problem, Colin.
Yeah.
That's exactly our point. I mean, really, particularly look, I voted for him, but I really am disappointed in the way President Trump has attacked our election system. It's really hurt the Republicans, quite frankly, but also our overall country. But any sort of doubt, we've all heard the old stories about waiting for certain precincts to come in Chicago or West Virginia or South Boston, whatever you want to pick the location. But people have that natural suspicion about our fellow Americans, and so we shouldn't do anything officially to aggravate it.
So I do want to say one thing. The idea that we can vote by mail is terrific, but the idea that we think everyone's going to vote by mail is not appropriate. Number one, you got to request the ballot. Number two, you have to understand.
Doesn't it save us money? And to me, it makes it gives more people a chance to vote.
So I agree. But when you have a polling place in an apartment building that people live, and it's been there for decades, it's very difficult.
And everybody there votes,
and everyone votes. It's very difficult to say to them, "You got to get a mail ballot." Right?
The politicians play to that, though. Instead of going out across the city and visiting other precincts, they go to the precincts where they're going to get the votes.
Yeah, well, that's
not fair either.
That's how you That's how you campaign. I mean, they have to. You go have a pizza party at Tabor Mill instead of going elsewhere where no one's going to vote.
Right. I also believed from Fort Rodman up to beyond Sassaquin is how you campaign.
Right.
And when you if you're running for a ward, you target a ward. If you're running citywide, you target every single resident in the city. I also want to say it is. If you look at the city budget, for the fun of it, the amount of money we spend on elections is is
de minimis.
Money, right?
De
minimis. So to close down a precinct and say, "Hey, touchdown, we saved $1,200," is not something to talk about.
Right.
So again, if you ask me, denied.
$1,200 of taxpayer money, though.
Oh yeah, but I agree 100%, and I did not spend taxpayer money in a way that I didn't believe was completely appropriate. But cutting back on an election, I can find $1,200 or $1,500 in many other places. We burn money in barrels every day. The idea that we would cut back on the ability of people to vote,
but we're
hurts.
We're
just
not
hurts.
because they can go through. Back to my first point. They can still vote through the mail.
I'm going to put you in charge. I'm going to do this. I'm going to put you in charge of educating everyone who has always gotten up first thing in the morning, whatever it is, go and vote, getting a sticker, explaining to them what you have to do. Especially people who don't have the technology to print something out, what you've got to do to request a ballot, to vote, to turn it back in, to not worry. Galvin on Thursday was saying, don't mail your ballots anymore. Right. We can't rely on the mail system. So I would put you in charge of that and say, get out there and let these people know how to do it. But the more the merrier. The other thing about it is then put out a bunch of drop boxes, so we don't have to worry about the mail. Right, so then you have drop boxes.
Nope, absolutely not, because drop boxes can't be trusted. Sorry.
Okay, but a vote, no. Where you drop something doesn't mean anything if you have the ability to authenticate the vote.
Right, you should be able to track it like you can track a FedEx package and know exactly which office it's in, where it went, where it was dropped off. That should be the same thing for a vote.
You can. I just want to make sure no one knows how I vote. Right?
I think that maintaining a robust mail-in system is very good. But I will tell you that voting in person is my preferred way to do it. I like going to the polls. I like the camaraderie of it. I like seeing everybody there. Marks and I went and voted in Fairhaven this year. We saw Kevin Cobbs, though. We saw a couple of the police officers. You saw people around. I saw listeners to the show. Got to see the poll workers themselves. In the years past, I've always held signs there, things like that. I mean, I think there's a real democratic spirit to it.
The taxpayers paid for that cop to stand there and talk to.
I appreciate
Don't talk to him while he's on a road job. Don't talk to him on that time. I mean, come on. You know what I'm saying, fellas?
No. Look, I understand your point, but...
Nerd. There's nothing wrong with that. You're a political nerd.
That is true. Guilty.
You love this stuff. And guess
Guilty.
what? It needs to change. It's costing the taxpayers money, and it doesn't need to. But I enjoyed the conversation, and have a good night.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Actually, let's take this time to take a break now.
Sure. If you want to get online, it's 508-996-0500. Join the nerds.
And I'm taking your messages in the app chat, regrettably, maybe.
Regrettably, yeah. And we're back. South Coast tonight.
And we're taking your calls at 508-996-0500. We're also taking your messages on the app chat here at WBSM. I actually want to... There is something from the app chat a few days ago that I didn't get to that I'd like your guys' opinion on. And it was William from New Bedford. He had asked, well, because of what happened in certain races, let's say Quentin Palfrey, for example, dropping out as Attorney General.
Okay.
Do you think early voting is a bad idea? He also mentioned Sonia Ching Diaz, but Sonia Ching Diaz dropped out like months ago, so people who were voting for her were making symbolic votes.
Right.
But I think it's the same thing for Quentin Palfrey, right? Anybody that's voting for Quentin Palfrey, first of all, probably is a bit more politically savvy because they're just trying to make a statement, right? Like, I don't think there's a lot of people that sincerely thought that Quentin Palfrey was going to win the election, right?
I agree with you, and I think that sometimes you get burned. I believe in the race for the presidential primary here on the Democrat side, when it was Obama and Hillary, when it got to Massachusetts, Joe Biden dropped out. Mm-hmm. So there were people who voted for Joe Biden as an example.
Pete Buttigieg, too. In 2020, Pete Buttigieg and Klobuchar dropped out to screw Bernie. Yeah. So look, from time to time, it's going to happen, But my feeling on early voting is, because I've done it, you want to early vote, but Well, it's play the odds, right?
Yes.
Play the odds. You vote for, first of all, if you're going to vote for a candidate that's, again, I think a lot of people that are voting that way probably, again, have an idea of, and just want to make a symbolic vote.
Right.
But it's play the odds. Vote for somebody that you might regret later, or don't make it to the polls that day,
right.
and then you don't get to vote at all. So,
right.
And situations like that of a candidate dropping out a week before, that doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't happen that. I mean, this Quentin Paltrow thing was very odd.
Yeah.
And look, he was trying to leverage whatever he had
over to Campbell,
right? With the people who were left.
Yeah.
And that is probably in the end going to hurt him, I would think, professionally.
It didn't look good to me. It was very.
No, it looked very.
It was very
obvious, is what it was.
Yeah.
It's very obvious.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. May I have another? Right. 508-996-0500. Good evening. You're live.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hey, what's going on?
Boy, that was quick. I just dialed you up. Mayor Lang, I'm curious. I am curious to ask you a question on, I not only voted for Donald Trump twice, but I actually wrote checks to his campaign twice. And on January 7th, 2021, I said to my friends, people that I know, I said to myself, Donald Trump was the best thing that ever happened to this country, and Donald Trump was the worst thing that ever happened to this country. I'm curious how you think as a Donald Trump supporter, and I'll never vote for him again, but I'm just curious what you think about what I just said.
So I agree with you that he was the worst thing that ever happened in this country. but I have to tell you that I wrote an article right after the 2016 election about that election that was published in Commonwealth and picked up by a number of different media outlets. It was a long article. It was several thousand words, not pages. And what I basically said was that this was an important change election, and I thought that Trump had spoken about issues that the Democratic Party had originally championed and abandoned, which meant jobs. You can't be the consumer country for the world if you have no jobs, right? You can't have a national defense if you don't manufacture anything.
Correct.
You can't have a country if you have open borders, right? And let people swarm in. A number of other issues that I thought Trump artfully campaigned on. Trump had a decision to make as far as the road he took. He took a road that moved away, from my perspective, from democratic values and moved more towards something of autocracy. And I think that was a major mistake. I also think his personality is so unusual that it's difficult for people to either you're 13 or 15% of the country that loves the guy, or you're 85% saying, what's the scoop here with this guy, But anyone who voted for him, I believe you can be repatriated. I don't think that this is a situation.
Right? I agree.
Where you've made a tremendous mistake in your life, and it's on, it's on you. I think we're all Americans.
This is the land of second chances.
Yeah, we're all Americans. We all believe in the country. We want to solve problems. We should work together. Not everything that Trump stood for is wrong. The things that he stands for right now make you extremely anxious and nervous, and you say this really isn't a dialogue that we've had. But I want to say something else, though, that I think is important. The conversation, the idea that you would call me and just say, "What do I think?" I sincerely appreciate. And while I'm teasing you a little bit, my feeling is we got to work together,
right?
Or this whole thing goes right down the drain.
So I was on the air the day after. Of course, I supported Donald Trump, and I thought he brought a lot of good policies to the table, and I thought he did a lot of good things, which hurt me really tremendously with the fiasco of January, what happened in January. And I couldn't believe it as it unfolded on the air. And I remember I had Congressman Keating on to talk about it, because he was right there in Washington when it happened. And, I mean, I was at a loss for words. I was stunned by what people were doing. And I never thought that my Republicans would ever attack police officers, ever. And I recognize that you can now say some of it was overblown. It's been overblown by the committee and things like that. Yeah, but I still saw it happen, right? And as for the girl who got shot, let me tell you something. I served in the military. I know what the right to use deadly force is. That woman was smashing through the glass doors of the Capitol. She saw an armed man on the other side. He told her to halt. She had no fear whatsoever, and she had a backpack. We only later found out there was nothing in the backpack. But I'm going to tell you something. I would have done exactly what that officer did. I would have regrettably shot that woman, because that's your job, and you do not abandon your post to a terrorist who's busting through the glass, who only later you find out wasn't armed. And by the way, she was a veteran. She knew what she was doing. She got, unfortunately, what she deserved.
Yeah.
Said you were hurt by Donald Trump?
If I can make one last comment, Chris and Marcus, I love your show.
Thank you.
And Mayor Lang, I'm 69 years old. You are the last Democrat I ever voted for.
Wow.
I appreciate that very much.
Well, what did you do to make them stop voting for Democrats?
Exactly. It's true. That's the only question that counts. Thanks for calling.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
So, Chris, you started on something, though, and I was thinking in 6 different directions. Sarah Lang did a great job on that Uvalde piece, and that was a very difficult piece to do.
Can we actually take a break and then talk about that?
Sure.
Is that
That'd
possible?
be great.
All right, let's do that.
1420 W.
And welcome back to the show.
We're holding Mayor Lang hostage past the 8 o'clock hour. Tell us a story, and then we'll let him go. He's here with you for now until...
We're sorry, Gig.
Yeah.
But
508-996-0500 is how you can get on. Actually, let's go back to the phones. Good evening. You're live. Hello.
Hi.
Hey, you're on the air.
Yes, just let me turn off my radio.
Okay.
I'm going back to the fact of culling voter lists.
Yes.
Okay.
I have brought this up for the Electoral Committee. When I moved here 10 years ago, there were 3 adults in the family. 3 years into it, one of them left. Did not contact, of course, how many people think of taking their name off the voters list.
Right.
And when we had an election, she gets, her mail comes to us, so we could easily request the ballot and send it in.
Absolutely.
And that is the failure of the whole system. That's why I went down, took the letter down to the election committee and said, we'd like to tell you this person has moved years ago. I still get mail from her when we have election. And they said, no, you can't do anything about it.
Well, no.
Later...
Wait. So thanks very much for calling and sharing this experience. They can pull people off when they have notification, and the election office does, and I don't know why it hasn't happened here, but does a very good job at that. When I ran for mayor, my mom, who had passed away, was still eligible to vote, and I knew how she was going to vote. Right? But she was still on the list. She didn't vote, obviously, but when I looked at it, that's how I knew that. And then I started looking and realizing that, as you said, neighbors, friends, clients who no longer live in the area or who are no longer alive are still on the list because they don't cull in a real-time manner. They cull in a project, or they cull when you come down, like you just talked about, and I don't know why it didn't work, but you go down and say, John Doe is no longer living in my house, and then they call it out. So you're right. You're 100% right.
No, I called in at another time when I think there was an election official in the radio station, and they said that they would have to send the name to the state and wait 2 election years and all this crap.
So then, how the heck if I move? How do I vote in my next town? You know, it's got to be removed. It's got to be something where you go in and you resolve it then.
And particularly in a city like New Bedford, where we have universities in the area, we have people who move in, they're here for a few years, particularly around the presidential cycles, they've registered to vote, maybe they vote, and then they move on, right? And we can't just have them lingering on the rolls, but we do.
You know what's great, though? I love the idea that this caller hears the word cull, understand exactly what it is, has had the experience, and calls in.
Right.
So it just makes everybody a little bit better trying to figure out how to resolve
cull's
this.
kind of a visceral word, isn't it?
I know,
It's kind of good.
Culling the herd.
Yeah. That's what it's called, but we should change it maybe.
They could come up with a paper trail, like if they had a legal notice, that you, if I go in and say this person doesn't live at this address, and I could sign a legal notice.
Right. So that is also an interesting aspect to it, that maybe what they're indicating is that they need to hear or independently verify, because what would prevent, it's almost like an election challenge if you went down and just said, now you have the direct knowledge, but if I said, gee, the neighbor down the block no longer is here, I'm doing it in good faith, but there may be someone who says, hey, I'm going to go down and give a list that I'm not really sure of.
Right.
So you have to have the checks and balances.
I know in Fairhaven a few years ago, if you didn't return the census, they took you off the voters list. And while I thought at first I thought that was excessive, I thought it was the most accurate way to do it. I agreed with it. Even if it bit some people, it just, what are you going to do if you don't return the census? They send it a couple times. You can't expect them to just continue, but apparently in New Bedford they do. And it's not, as you pointed out, Scott, it's not good for our percentages. It's not good for an accuracy. I don't think people who are on the voters list are voting illegally if they're not supposed to be there. I don't think that that's a major problem.
No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, but again, it's the aura of suspicion, right? That, hey, my neighbor's I'm getting a ballot at my house for my old neighbor. So what's going on down the street, right? If I'm not voting this, but maybe my neighbor is voting twice, one of those type of things. Again, it's suspicious stuff. It undermines our democracy in the end.
But I know who's living in my house, and that person isn't and hasn't been for 7 years. That's a long time to be carried on a list.
Right.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Something definitely needs to be done about that. Thank you for the call, man. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
So,
that was a very good call.
I didn't even think about that. The turnout numbers. Not calling the voters is it's just cleansing the
voters list.
Yeah. And I just looked at I was able to get some statistics. So in 2017, the mayoral election, I believe that was that Charlie Perry and John Mitchell? Yeah, it was Charlie Perry and John Mitchell.
It was the greatest song of mayoral elections.
That was
Charlie Perry is on the move.
20.
Do you remember that?
25%.
In my head again now. Thanks.
Oh no, it's beautiful.
25% turnout.
Dwayne DeRock, yeah.
25% turnout. 2019, 16.4% turnout. 2021, just municipal election, 10% turnout.
See, that's not a good trend.
15% drop off in 5 years. I wonder what's happened in the last 5 years.
So it's been a pitched decline, right? Mm-hmm. And as Mayor Mitchell,
you can make a line graph and you can see the spike, and then you can see the steady, the downslope,
the clip it falls off of. Mm-hmm. As Mayor Mitchell is pointing out, and Scott, I know you agree with this. You've been in politics a long time. The candidates look at where the votes are. Mm-hmm. They're going to spend time in Quincy because Quincy votes.
Right.
And when it comes time to dividing up the pie, folks, it's a lot harder for a Mark Montigny and Chris Markey to get money for our area than it is for someone like a Tolman who's coming out of that area.
The mayor's exactly right on that. Yeah.
So I will say something before we have to take this break. We got a big break ahead. We talked about Diana DeZoglio and how she was able to break the code and how to win without Boston in the suburbs.
It's amazing.
Because but she won 90% of all towns. Right. It took her 90% of all towns to beat Boston and she got 54% of the vote, with 90% of all towns versus Boston. 508-996-0500. We're going to take a break. I'll be right back. The votes that didn't come out on time, not only it kills the enthusiasm for the process.
It totally does.
You hear people saying in the office, "Oh, well, I didn't. What is it a big deal?" It's like, well, that's what you do for a living. You're supposed to give us the results, and if you don't give us the results, it's a big deal. If I didn't give you guys a radio program every night, I wouldn't say, if I didn't just show up one night from 7 to 10, you'd be like, why was there dead air? I don't know. It's what I didn't want to go. Why was it a big deal?
And particularly when Fall River is coming in with their numbers, and Attleboro's coming in with their numbers.
And Attleboro's a little smaller, but Fall River's basically the same size, and they're coming in an hour early, and they did last time as well. It makes people look at New Bedford and be like, what's the point?
And here's the thing. Look, I'm a competitive guy. We pull you people in as an audience. You want to be with us here. It's local radio. We're giving you local news. But we also recognize that you're looking for information. And at some point, you may not realize that New Bedford didn't give it to any media outlets, right? So you may just turn the dial and put on the news. So that's why we had to tell you why we didn't have the information.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, call your city councilor, call the elections office.